Good morning, everyone. Always very good being here, and especially having the opportunity to share some thoughts and something that we learn during the course of our lives. I was thinking about when the topic was presented to me and by Abigail. I was thinking about what could I say differently that what I already said and so many people already mentioned about being poor in spirit. What is actually being poor in spirit? Being humble, being small. It's quite a challenge. It is because in the world that we live in, we feel sometimes maybe it's the inheritance of the past, the necessity to be someone to show up. Media nowadays, so many Instagrams, page, Facebooks, or whatever. So we are there maybe to show our face. We are the best. We are simply someone that unquestionable. We are not like simple, ordinary people. We are someone that makes a difference. Maybe the arrogance, maybe the presumptions that we still have within disconnects us to the main source. Maybe this first step of this immense ladder to one day acquire angelic qualities. And at this moment, we are in the first stages of humanity. We are trying to learn how to be humans. We are trying to learn how to respect others. We are trying to be Christians because the PhD for angelical qualities, it's way down the road. And sometimes we change courses in our life. And because of, as I mentioned, our past, we feel like so much arrogance inside of ourselves. So there's like a battle inside of each and every one of us. Of course, it varies depending on the level of morality, the level of understanding that we already acquired. It varies a lot. Some individuals are older in terms of like spiritually evolving, like so many lives doing sorrows, understanding, and they already acquire a sense of maturity that put these persons, some of us, in a position of like understanding that only through the position of serving others, being loving, humbling, forgiving, it's going to put us in a much better position, spiritually speaking, if I can use this term. I prepare a few slides with the help of my wife because otherwise I'm going to be only using like a few notes, and she's the master of like putting in place like a few images that we can maybe guide us like how to direct our thoughts. And humanity greatest difficulty, pride, for all of us in different levels. Absolutely. Even if we think like, no, I'm not pride. I'm sorry to tell you, we are all in certain levels. We are. And when reason suggests forgiveness, pride and arrogance can obstruct our ability to embrace it. Isn't it true? If you can pay attention to your life, don't need to dive further in the previous existence. Nowadays, since we understand, since we know each other, and this is the most difficult thing, is to know each other, to know thyself, as very well stated in one of the questions of the Spirit's book, 919 was the question that Allan Kardec posed in the Spirit's book, and asked, what is the best way for us to maybe correct the trajectory that we are going through? Know thyself. And this is quite difficult for many of us. At least I'm talking to me. Maybe there's some saint sitting on those chairs. When the heart seeks brotherhood, pride can hinder the gestures. Isn't it true? Many times. When our conscience highlights our mistakes, pride often makes us believe that only others makes mistakes. This is really interesting. And pride can hinder us from accepting feedback from friends or family that challenges our perspective. That's true. Many times. It masquerades sometimes because we are the ability that we have to masquerade those feelings are fantastic. We don't have the ability to love and to forgive and to respect, but this ability to masquerade what we are feeling in what kind of position that we are, trying to adapt our desires to certain circumstances devoid from humbling actions. Oh, we are so good at that. Very good at that. On question 785 on the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec asks, what is the greatest obstacle to progress? Pride and selfishness. It is. And of course, there's a comment by Kardec explaining everything, but pride and selfishness are the greatest obstacles. And we sometimes make confusion with prudence versus pride. Pride often hides behind the mask of self-love, just as selfishness can disguise itself as prudence. It is essential to tell them apart so we do not misjudge our own feelings. Know thyself, so we can maybe adjust much better to the destination that we are all are destined to be one day. Love, humility, gentleness. Who really here, not here in this audience, really love with capital L? Who is really here humble? And who is really here gentleness? I'm not talking over here. I'm talking about the face of the earth. Interesting, I'm going to share you something. I know it's being recorded and it's going to destroy my reputation. But was last Thursday. Came from the meeting that we had over here, that we have over here every Thursday. And I was like, oh my God, so nice, the spirituality. I was like in tears, like thinking about so many things, good things, how one day this is the destination that I'm waiting for, like to love abundantly. And then the lights turned from red to green, and I was like in this awe. And then someone honked behind me. I was like, who's this guy is honking the horn behind of me? See how we are so fragile and everything that and then immediately, thank God, was immediately, I thought to myself, Marcelo, look the contrast. Look at the antagonism that you have inside of you. And then the guy like, boom, it says like, go with God, my friend. God bless you. Go in peace. But this is something that when we see this, it's very obvious that we still have work to do inside of ourselves. And maybe a moment of course, loving, fraternal love with our brothers and sisters. And maybe because of a prayer, because of a beautiful lecture, because of a page that we read, it put us in a stage of elevation. It doesn't mean that this is actually a virtue that we already acquire for good. This is a process that being little by little, it's being building inside of ourselves. It takes times. It takes many lives so we can one day be exactly someone that really love, someone really humble, and somebody that really are very gentle. Doesn't matter the circumstances that we are facing. Love and humility, by contrast, are expressed through gentleness. Those who truly love related to others with humility. The proud refuse to forgive, convinced that their supposed authority must always be upheld. The humble and compassionate person, however, sees a brother or sister in everyone. They understand that a heart capable of forgiving itself is also capable of forgiving the shortcomings of others. And it takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. Because only the courageous can triumph over pride and selfishness. It takes a lot of courage to make this examination within and see the necessity to change and be someone and be something, be an instrument of peace, as St. Francis of Assisi once said. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. But not simply using your lips or the capacity, the intellectual capacity that we all have, we already acquired. Something that actually it's so imprinted in our DNA, I would say the spiritual DNA, that no matter the circumstances outside, I don't change. I am constantly living in the state of charitable and charity, benevolence, indulgence, forgiveness. I says, like, Marcelo, this is impossible nowadays. Maybe it's impossible because nature don't jump like from one step to another. And of course, it's going to take time for us to make this analysis and understand that we still have some areas inside of ourselves needs to be polished, needs to be worked, needs to be like analyzed. And then, thanks to the Spiritist teachings, we can understand that this is a working process that's going to put us in a much better position one day, and happier the person who embrace this inner battle, the good fought, as Paul of Tarsus once said, the good fought, not with someone outside, within here. And takes a lot of courage for us to make this examination and to see, yeah, I have a lot of flaws and needs to be addressed, and I need to work on them. On posthumous work, one of the chapters mentioned about selfishness and pride. He mentioned about their causes, effects, and means of destroying them. Both selfishness and pride arise from a natural feeling, the instinct of self-preservation. See, how interesting is this? All instincts have their reason for being in usefulness, for God did not create anything useless. So this was good in a moment of our existence, not in this moment, our existence as creatures of God. God did not create evil. Man is the one who produces it, abusing God's gift due to free will. There's something that I extracted the text over here. And it says something like that. Let me see if I can get it over here. It is well known that most of life's miseries originate from the selfishness of men. Since each one thinks of themselves before thinking of others and always considers satisfying their own desires first, each one naturally works to provide satisfactions for themselves at any cost, sacrificing the interests of others without hesitation, whether in the smallest matters or in the greatest, both morally and materially. And this leads to all social antagonisms, struggles, conflicts, and miseries, as each person is only concerned with depriving their neighbor. Selfishness originates from pride. The exaltation of one's personality leads a person to consider themselves above others, believing they have superior rights. They become offended by anything that they see as an offense to their rights. The importance that, due to pride, they attribute to themselves naturally makes them selfish. Both selfishness and pride arise, as we read here, from natural feelings, the instinct of self-preservation. And then the text go on and on. But it explains us how these instincts are very well correlated with the sentiments that we have over here. And since we are not like in the beginning of a stages of creation, in the animal stage, and we already have the discernment and the free will to opt, we can choose to be gentle or to be not very gentle, quite to the contrary. And especially us, that we have all these informations contained in the Spiritist teachings. Now we cannot deny that we don't have information anymore. Now we cannot deny that, oh, I have only this life to survive, and when I die, everything is over. Because we have the messages from the Spirit bringing us, and Carlos conducting one of the study groups, Heaven and Hell. You will see how the spirits, once they pass away to the other realm of life, how they feel, how they were when they were over here on the face of the earth, showing us we all have to fight a good fight over here, so we, being courageous, win against pride and selfishness. So one day we acquire this plenitude, the stage of happiness that we are all destined to feel and to experience. There's a book not yet translated, Green Light, Sinal Verde, psychographed by Francisco Cândido Xavier and dictated by the spirit André Luiz on chapter 26. And there's by the end of this chapter, around happiness, it shows a quote by St. Augustine. St. Augustine encapsulates the essence of humility as a prerequisite for spiritual elevation. We must first embrace our humanity before striving for angelic qualities. And it makes such a comparison using, this is something else. I changed the slides over here. But it says on the same page, on the same chapter, St. Augustine mentioning, just as a tree needs to strengthen its roots in the ground to grow tall, humans must root themselves in humility and self-knowledge before seeking divine ascension or holiness. We need to learn first how to be humans before thinking about, I'm going to be an angel. I'm going to be so in bliss. Nothing more matters to me in the earth. We still are struggling to be humans, to respect one another, to forgive one another, to have indulgence. It doesn't mean that we're going to have to cross our arms and let the world explode. Of course, this is not the case. But we have to treat our life, the way that we walk through our existence, in a very different way, more Christian. And Christian is not following a character. Absolutely, it's not. It's following something that it's a proposition to free ourselves from the past, from what we are now, right now. Everybody knows that I have such a intense. I love this character. This man that actually impact my life, and I think it's impact your lives in such a way, because He was the example of humbleness, because it's the transformation that he made from one stage to another was so profound, and he makes such an impact in the existence of so many people, bringing Christ back again with simplicity and humility, exemplifying the teachings of Christ in such a way, in an era of contrast was so exaggerated. We will see the figure of Francis of Assisi. Interesting, because he was born September 1181. Some biography says 1182, right? So medieval times, in a very wealthy family. Initially, his name, Giovanni de Bernardoni, John of Bernardoni. Interesting. And through the informations that we have, he was the reincarnation of one of the loving apostles of Christ, John the Evangelist. Look the similitude, the similar names: Giovanni, John, John the Evangelist. And then, because his father was a very wealthy man and the main customers were from France, he decided to change the name of Giovanni to Francesco, Francis, little French man. And then from Giovanni, he changed to Francis. Francis was like a boy, just like the playboy of nowadays, full of money, exposed to all kinds of material pleasures. When we have money, it's easy to deviate from the path of righteousness. And he was not different. But more he was exposed to material pleasures, more emptiness he was feeling inside. Maybe it was the call of Christ knocking on his heart every day. And he was looking outside what was already within. One day, because, he has so many ideas. He wants to be recognized, just like the boys in TikTok. Put a video over here. I want to be recognized. I want to be famous. I want to make money easy. And he was maybe not in the same way, but something like that. He desired to be a knight, a horseman, to engage in battlefields. Remember, right in the heart of Italy, Assisi, where he was born, the city of Assisi was having a fight with Perugia. Tutti buona gente, I'll speak Italian later on. Well, that's having this fight with Perugia, and says okay, I want to be there. I want to be a horseman. I want to be a knight. And then he was in prison for 1 year. And inside of the prison cell, he started diving inside of his heart and his mind, and maybe making a comparison. We are all here inside of this prison, which is our body, our soul imprisoned in flesh and bones and blood, trying to subject to all the struggles, making this comparison so we can understand what is actually the most important thing in our existence. After 1 year, he was free, but completely changed. And then, making so many analyses, one day, he stripped himself from all the clothes in front of a place. His father was like, oh my God, he's crazy. He says I don't want anything else, anything related to material pleasures. Of course, nobody needs to be stripped of their clothes to be an example of Christianity. But nowadays, you see church deviating completely from the humbleness and the proposition of Christ. The simplicity, the humbleness, the loving for the nature, loving from one another, loving for every creature of the universe. And then had to be someone with such a courageous attitude to change completely, maybe the course of his changing the course of his existence there, impact so many people in that region. One day he saw ruins, a small church, San Damiano, and he listened to the voice of Christ. Rebuild my church, Francesco. And first he thought was something, a material church. And it's not like rebuilding the church, rock by rock, stone by stone. But little by little, more people, more playboys were saying like, oh my God, this guy is doing something different. In the beginning, maybe most of us didn't understand very well, but we are just like kind of a hippies, you know? Oh, let's follow this guy. This guy has a different propositions. He's trying to do something marvelous. No one was equal to Francesco because Francesco dived within, trying to find the Christ within, the God within. And then, during the course of his life, back in those days, he decided to form an order, the Franciscans order. And he was he decided to go to Pope, to visit the Pope, right in the heart, in Rome, in the heart of Italy. Being there, he found a lot of obstructions and all the cardinals saying like, this guy, all dirty, all smelly, with a few friends, deciding to form a new order. We have so many. Why another one? My God, they reject right away. Not even the Pope was there. And then the cardinal says like, no, this guy is a lunatic. But there was one guy, one of the cardinals, Giovanni di San Paolo, John of St. Paul, that had a dream previously in a few days prior. And then this dream, it says like, there's one book by the name The Brother of Assisi, written by a Catholic friar, Ignacio Larrañaga. He was a Spanish Franciscan friar, and there's so many biographies of Francis of Assisi, but in this specific biography, with a very respectable biography, we saw this cardinal. This is part of her history. And the cardinal was a kind of advocates the cause of Francesco, and says like, and he had a dream before, says like he saw like a man, a poor man, holding a dream before the encounter of Francesco, where saw a poor ragman, Francesco, holding up the falling walls of the Basilica of John of Lateran, now where the Pope is. And then he would like starting to advocate in favor of Francesco. And this is the speech that he promotes, that he delivered in front of the cardinals, brothers of the Sacred College of Cardinals. I am pleased to see that you judge coldly. I believe it is our duty to cut away the artificial fantasies. But we must be consistent and be careful not to cut the tie of coherence. If your eminences, high positions of church, believe that this way of life should not be approved because it is impossible to practice, I ask you all, what is this poor man of God asking, if not to fully and literally fulfill the gospel of the Lord Jesus? And if this program is unfeasible, then let us be consistent. The gospel itself is also an utopia, and its author a fantasist, a lunatic. But if the gospel is impossible, what is the meaning and the purpose of church? What does the College of Cardinals and the Pope himself mean? And what is their role? What are we doing here? Let us draw the conclusion. We are all imposters. We are all imposters. So this statement caused such a strong moral shock among the assembly that the order of Franciscans were approved later by the Pope Innocent III. And there's one book, not yet translated. It says Chico Xavier, Dialogues and Memories. And one of the information that it's contained in this book, it's that Cardinal, Giovanni di San Paolo, John of St. Paul, was one of the reincarnations of Emmanuel. So see how when we have the will to do something different, based on love, humbleness, forgiving, the above send some advocates to help us to move forward. And interesting, because the example of Francesco of the Assisi, it's the example of humbleness. Because the way that he walked through the earth, preaching to be a poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Being a poor in spirit, it doesn't mean that we have to wear rotten clothes and to be filthy. Doesn't mean for us to be like talking like with a very calm voice, like an angel. No, that's not the proposition. Being poor in spirit means in a position of serving. Then in a position that we know that we don't know everything, but we know enough to be in a position of service, to helping others. It's the first step of this immense ladder, and the Beatitudes explains us in such a way that brings us hope. But first we need to start in this first step of the ladder. And Francesco is giving so many examples to all of us. And 800 years later, we are talking about him as one of the greatest examples of being poor in spirit. One of the followers of his followers we're having actually the same debate that maybe we are having nowadays with all this knowledge of the Spiritist teachings. How can we position ourselves once we are facing someone totally contrary to us, in a position of bringing the sword and cutting our hair, not literally, but in a very intellectual way, being humble. Because we all want to be big, we all want to be in the top of the line in all the social media. We all want to be very important and want to be recognized. But being poor in spirit, and this is one of the great examples, and we're going to find in the same book. This book is a Catholic book. It's not a Spiritist book. The Brother of Assisi, by this friar, Ignacio Larrañaga. It's interesting. Of course, the vision is Catholic, but it brings us so much similitude, similar visions with the Spiritist teachings. And one of the conversation that Francesco were having with one of his followers was so intense. And it's such like a kind of like an advice. And this advice very well suited to all of us nowadays, 800 years later. Francis, talking to his brother, says like, oh, my dear brother, everyone wants to triumph, to shine. And we do this in a sacred but profane mix of our desires and the interest of God. When I think of this, I feel like crying. My brother, let us not forget the cross. How hard it is to strip ourselves. Less of me, more Jesus. Less ego, more Christ. As John the Baptist said, it is necessary that I became smaller so he, Christ, may grow inside of me. How hard it is to become poor in spirit. No one wants to be small. No one wants to be humble. No one wants to be in a position of serving. With our arrogance and presumptions, we believe we can and must do something grand. redeem, organize, transform, save humanity. But only God within saves. Only God saves. In the moment of truth, our salvation organizations, our apostolic strategies roll down the hill of frustration. We have recent examples of this, but we do not correct ourselves. Believe me, my brother, it is infinitely easier to set up a powerful machine of apostolic conquest than to become small and humble. That is why we instinctively close our eyes to the Master's cross. That is to sacrifice, to surrender, to change our habits, to forgive, to love, to give up vices, give up to hurt others, hatred. We instinctively close our eyes to the cross and we justify ourselves with 1,000 rationalizations in our desires for worldly conquest and victories. Salvation, my brother, said Francisco to one of his followers, begins with humility, to be in the position of serving others. It starts when we lower ourselves and acknowledge that it is only God alone who saves, the God within. And without charity, there's no salvation, benevolence towards everyone, indulgence toward the imperfections of others, and forgiveness for offenses. This God within, connected with the parental source, with its God, this is the only way that we can be saved. And only God, the Almighty, with His omnipotent and does not, only He, God, is omnipotent and does not need anyone. And if He needed anything, it would be small, poor, humble servants who imitate His Son, submissive and obedient, capable of loving and forgiving others. From our side, only this. The rest is up to God. When I read this portion of the book, The Brother of Assisi, I made a few adaptations, of course, because it's, of course, this is a speech written by a Catholic friar, Franciscan friar, but it's very well in synchrony with what we believe and what the Spiritist teachings has to offer to all of us. We need to start from the beginning, the first step of this ladder, being humble. Because if you're not humble, we cannot be patient. If we are not humble, we cannot be the light of the world. If we are not humble, we cannot forgive. If we're not humble, we are going to suffer. But the consolation, it's not going to come in the right way. And we're going to be arguing and bashing God because why with me? If I'm not humble, I cannot go forward trying to understand that there is a purpose of life. And the prison that we are at this moment, which is this flesh and blood that imprison my spirit in the prison reincarnation, has an objective to bring us down, not literally, but just like the tree that first insert their roots inside of the soil to gain strength and once grow to the highest, and one day brings flower and fruits, serving others, helping humanity. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace, said him. And we repeat this, asking Christ to help us to be at service, to be an instrument of peace. But there's hatred. Let me bring love. Love your enemies. We see in the Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. Where there's offense, let me bring forgiveness. If anyone strikes you on their right cheek, offer them the other. And constantly in this world, we are being hit in one of the cheek. And what we do, we hit back. Not literally with the ability, the intellectual ability that we all have sometimes to destroy others with our tongue, not with the sword anymore. Where there's discord, let me bring unity. Bless are the peacemakers. We need so much of peace in our days. So many wars, so many arrogance, so many battles everywhere. Where there's error, let me bring the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. What kind of truth is? It's my truth? It's your truth? No. The truth is, love is the truth. Charity, benevolence, indulgence, forgiveness, this is the truth. And without this, we're going to be all rolling, incarnation after incarnation, facing the same lessons that we didn't acquire in this present one, and again and again and again. Where there's doubt, let me bring faith. Oh, you little faith, why did you doubt? Where there is despair, let me bring hope. In the world, you will have tribulations, but take heart. Where there's darkness, let me bring light. You are the light of the world. We are all light of the world, and we can make a difference. It doesn't have to save Africa or to change or correct climate change. Of course, these are all important things to do, but let's start small. Let's start to be humans. As I mentioned in the beginning, the course for angels starts from the beginning. We're still learning to be humans. We are still learning to respect one another. We are still learning to forgive, to understand. And this is a big deal because we don't know how to do this wholeheartedly. We have a glimpse, which is good, but we don't know this wholeheartedly. We still like baby steps. Where there's sadness, let me bring joy. Rejoice in the Lord always. In any circumstances, bring the word of Christ, but not like the old priests. Maybe I was once. Like the word of Christ, it doesn't mean to put a Bible over here, a Spirit's book I have got. No, be a living gospel, walking everywhere, because you're going to face any kind of circumstances. And people are going to say like, this guy is different. That girl is different. Someone is making a different, impactful thing in my life, a positive one. Let's be the light of the world. And the three conscious invitations of the prayer: to console, much more than wishing to be consoled; understand, much more wishing to be understood; and to love, more than we wish to be loved. Marcelo, this is an utopia. It's not. He said, you can do what I do and much more, said Christ once. This is not an utopia. This is possible. I see myself. I remember when I was like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I am different. Not in the shape, of course, a little bigger, but I am different. I am different. I can make this comparison. And I think you all can make this comparison if you're different or not. Maybe not like a saint that we wish to be, but we are different. Now we don't react immediately. We think a little bit. Maybe we can still reacting, but we think a little bit before like applying the law of Talion, you know? Someone hit you, I'm going to hit you back. No, we think a little bit. So we are different. This lesson, what is the lesson that Francesco brings us? The inversion of ego. Stop waiting and start offering. It is more blessed to give than to receive. A life based on service, not on retribution. The final thought so we can close our talk. The instrument of peace is the wakened spirit, because it is by giving that we receive, by forgiving that we are forgiven, and it is by dying the old man that still resides inside of us that we are going to live for this blissful, this life that it's waiting for all of us. And this is the final slide. This morning I was thinking about, like, Marcelo, you're going to repeat the same lecture that you repeat over and over and over. People are going to sleep in the audience. Are you sure? This is how I was talking to myself. Are you sure you're going to say, I was talking to myself, I'm sure I'm going to say this. And then it looks like the other voice was talking to me. Are you already being humble? It's been like quite some time, centuries. Are you already applying everything that you're going to present? And then I said, like, not yet. It's kind of like a debating inside of our head. You know, the little devil, the little angel here, over here. And I was like thinking about, like, oh my God, yes. We need to hear this again, and put this in practice, not only to presenting this, because we are all expecting a fantastic lecture, and this is not, I know. But this is something that I need to put in place, and maybe to put the slides so I can get everything that I just read to you and apply to me. And to be someone courageous, not to only speak, but to put this in practice. It doesn't matter if people outside not understand. I need to do this. I need to be a living example. It's not going to be in this life. I know this. But every big journey starts with the first step. And let's be humble. Blessed are the poor in spirit, humble. Because one day, it's going to be, we all going to be in the kingdom of heaven. Thank you very much. Sorry. The priest from the past.